The letter arrived 3 days after Christmas, December 28, 1944. Snow fell on a small house in Ohio. While inside, a mother's hands trembled as she read words that would haunt her forever. Your son volunteered for the mission. He knew the odds. He went anyway. They called it suicide. He called it duty. Private First Class William Shepard wasn't supposed to be a hero. He was the quiet one in his platoon, the one who wrote letters home every Sunday, the one who carried extra rations to share with hungry civilians, the one who kept a photo of his kid sister tucked inside his helmet, promising her he'd come home to teach her how to ride the bicycle he'd bought with his last paycheck before shipping out. But war doesn't choose its heroes based on promises. It was the Battle of the Bulge, the Ardennes Forest, Hitler's last desperate gamble to split the Allied forces and turn the tide of a war he was losing. American troops were scattered, confused, freezing in foxholes carved from frozen earth. The 101st Airborne was surrounded at Bastogne, supply lines were cut, ammunition was running low, and somewhere in that white hell, a German panzer division was rolling toward a field hospital packed with 300 wounded Americans who couldn't be moved. The hospital had 12 hours, maybe less. Someone had to stop those tanks. Someone had to buy time for the wounded to evacuate. Someone had to run through 2 miles of open ground alone, carrying nothing but satchel charges and a prayer, to blow the bridge at Chinon before the panzers crossed. William Shepard raised his hand. His commanding officer looked at him like he'd lost his mind. That's not a mission, Private, that's a death sentence. But Shepard was already checking his explosives, already mapping the route in his head, already writing one last letter he'd never send. To understand why a 22-year-old farm boy from Ohio would volunteer to die, you have to understand what December 1944 meant to the men fighting in Europe. They'd celebrated D-Day 6 months earlier. They'd liberated Paris. They'd pushed the Germans back to their own borders. Everyone said the war would be over by Christmas. Everyone was wrong. The Ardennes offensive hit like a sledgehammer on December 16th. 200,000 German troops, nearly 1,000 tanks. Complete surprise. Within days, American units were scattered and surrounded. The weather was so bad that Allied air support couldn't fly. The temperature dropped to -20. Men's feet turned black with frostbite inside their boots. Rifles jammed. Radio batteries died. Some soldiers went snowblind from the endless white, and in the middle of this frozen chaos, field hospitals became islands of hope, places where medics worked miracles with morphine and plasma, where surgeons operated by candlelight in tents that shook from artillery fire, where men missing arms and legs waited for evacuation, trusting that someone, somewhere, would keep the enemy away long enough for them to survive. The hospital at Chinon was one of those islands. It sat in a converted church, red crosses painted on the roof, supposedly protected by the Geneva Convention. But the SS Panzer Division rolling toward it didn't care about conventions. They'd already executed American prisoners at Malmedy. They'd already shown what they thought of rules. Intelligence reports were clear. The panzers would reach the bridge by dawn. Once across, nothing stood between them and the hospital. The nearest American armor was 20 miles away, fighting its own desperate battle. Air support was grounded by blizzard conditions. Artillery was out of range. The wounded men in that hospital, men who'd already given pieces of themselves to this war, had no way to defend themselves. No way to run. No way to fight back. Unless someone blew that bridge. The mission briefing was short because there wasn't much to brief. 2 miles of open terrain, no cover. German patrols everywhere, machine gun nests overlooking the approach. And at the end, a stone bridge wired with demolition charges that had to be placed by hand and detonated manually. Whoever went wouldn't have time to get clear before the explosion. When the lieutenant asked for volunteers, the room fell silent. These weren't cowards. These were men who'd fought from Normandy to the German border. Men who'd charged into machine gun fire and jumped from planes behind enemy lines. But this wasn't a mission. This was a calculation. Your life for 300 others. William Shepard stood up. You don't have to do this. Sergeant Morrison had pulled Shepard aside, speaking low so the others wouldn't hear. They'd served together since North Africa. Morrison had been best man at Shepard's wedding, conducted by an army chaplain 3 days before they shipped out. He knew what this meant. Shepard was checking his satchel charges, fingers steady despite the cold. Each explosive had to be placed perfectly. The bridge's weak points memorized from reconnaissance photos. No room for error. No second chances. Someone has to, Sarge. Not you. You've got Mary waiting. You've got 300 men in that hospital have people waiting too. The conversation every soldier knows but never speaks, the arithmetic of war, your life measured against others, your future weighed against theirs, your dreams catalogued and filed away because duty doesn't care about dreams. Shepard had dreams, small ones, the kind that seem meaningless until they're all you have. Teaching his sister to ride that bicycle, taking Mary dancing at the Avalon ballroom where they'd met, working his father's farm, feeling Ohio soil between his fingers instead of French mud, having children who'd never have to learn what bazookas and Bangalore torpedoes were for. But 300 men had dreams too, men who'd already paid prices Shepard couldn't imagine. Men lying on stretchers, morphine dulling pain but not fear, wondering if they'd ever see home again, wondering if anyone would come for them, wondering if they'd been forgotten in the chaos of retreat and counterattack. Morrison tried again. Let me go with you. Two of us means 2 widows instead of 1. The brutal honesty of it stopped Morrison cold. This wasn't heroics. This wasn't glory. This was mathematics. 1 life to save 300. The least loss for the greatest gain. The kind of calculation they don't teach in basic training because knowing it and living it are different things entirely. Shepard finished with the charges. 8 pounds of explosive. Enough to drop the bridge's center span. Enough to stop Panzer's cold. Enough to buy time. He tucked the detonator inside his jacket, close to his heart where body heat would keep it from freezing. Tell Mary I loved her. Tell her I'm sorry about the bicycle. Tell her yourself when you get back. They both knew he wouldn't be back, but soldiers lied to each other sometimes. Small mercies in a world running short on mercy. Shepard moved toward the door, stopped, turned back. Actually, don't tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'm proud. Tell her I did something that mattered. Then he was gone, swallowed by the blizzard and the night. 2 miles doesn't sound like much. On a summer day in Ohio, Shepard could run it in 15 minutes. But this wasn't Ohio, and this wasn't summer. This was December in the Ardennes, where every step was a battle against wind that cut like razors and snow that grabbed at your boots like quicksand. He moved in rushes. 10 yards, drop, listen. 10 more yards, drop, listen. The white-on-white camouflage made him nearly invisible, but nearly wasn't completely. German patrols were out there. He could hear them sometimes. Voices carrying on the wind, the crunch of boots on snow. Once, so close he could smell the tobacco from their cigarettes. The satchel charges hung heavy on his back. 8 pounds doesn't sound like much either. But weight is different when death is attached to it, when every step brings you closer to the moment you'll pull the detonator and cease to exist. When you're carrying your own erasure. A flare went up. Shepard pressed himself into the snow, becoming part of the landscape. The magnesium light turned night into harsh day, throwing shadows that could betray movement. He didn't move, didn't breathe, counted seconds. The flare died. Darkness returned. He pushed forward. Halfway there, he found the first body. American, frozen solid, half buried in a drift. One of the scouts sent out earlier, probably. They'd tried other ways to stop the Panzers, mines that the Germans detected and removed, artillery that fell short, airstrikes that never came. Now it came down to this: 1 man with explosives and will. The bridge appeared through the snow like something from a nightmare. Massive stone arches spanning a gorge that dropped 40 feet to a frozen stream, built by Romans, locals said, survived 2,000 years of history to become a key point in humanity's most mechanized war. Tomorrow's tanks rolling over yesterday's stones. Machine gun nests flanked both approaches. Shepard could see the steam from the gunner's breath, could see the lazy arcs of tracer fire as they tested their weapons, could see the death waiting for anyone stupid enough to try a frontal assault. But Shepard wasn't trying an assault. He was trying something much simpler and much harder. He was trying to disappear, to become nothing, to move so carefully, so quietly, that the universe itself might forget he was there. He began working his way down the gorge. The descent was a nightmare of ice and rocks. No path, no handholds that didn't crumble. No way to know if the next step would send him tumbling 40 feet to his death. But falling might have been mercy compared to what waited if he succeeded. At least falling would be quick. 20 minutes. 30. Time became meaningless. There was only the next handhold, the next foothold, the next impossible inch toward the bridge's support pillars. His fingers had long since gone numb inside his gloves. His face was a mask of ice. But he kept moving because stopping meant failing, and failing meant 300 men would die wondering why no one came. He reached the first pillar, ancient stone, weathered by centuries but still strong, still defiant. Like it was daring him to try. He pulled out the first charge. The art of demolition is precise. It's not about power. It's about placement. Finding the points where a structure's strength becomes its weakness, where the very engineering that holds it up can be turned against it. Shepard had learned this in training, but training was on practice bridges with instructors watching and second chances available. This was different. His numb fingers fumbled with the first charge. The explosive had to be wedged deep into a crevice where the blast would transfer directly into the stone. Too shallow and it would just scar the surface. Too exposed and a German patrol might spot it. He worked by feel more than sight. The darkness under the bridge absolute. The second charge went on the opposite pillar. Balance was crucial. The bridge had to fall completely, not just sag. A damaged bridge might slow tanks but not stop them. And slow wasn't good enough. Not with 300 lives hanging in the balance. He'd written Mary so many letters from so many places. North Africa where the sand got into everything. Sicily where the lemons grew wild. Normandy where he'd helped liberate a school and the children had sung for the American soldiers, always telling her about the world he was seeing, the people he was meeting, the future they'd have when this was over. The last letter, the one in his pocket, was different. No descriptions of foreign places. No promises about tomorrow, just truth. I found something worth more than my life. I found a reason that makes sense of all of this. Don't mourn me. Celebrate that I got to choose, that in all this madness, I found one perfect moment of clarity. Third charge. Fourth. His hands were mechanical now, operating on muscle memory while his mind drifted. He thought about his sister, 12 years old and already talking about becoming a nurse, inspired by the medics she'd met when William was home on leave, wanting to heal what others broke. The bicycle was in the barn, covered by a tarp. A Schwinn, cherry red, with a bell and streamers on the handlebars. He'd saved for 6 months to buy it, promised to teach her when he got back, promised a lot of things. Fifth charge. Sixth. The stone was so cold it burned through his gloves. Or maybe that was frostbite setting in. Hard to tell anymore. Everything was cold. Everything was pain. Everything was necessary. Voices above. German, patrol checking the bridge. Shepard froze, pressed against the pillar. Snow fell from the bridge deck, disturbed by boots. If they looked down, if they shined a light, if they suspected. But why would they suspect? Who would be insane enough to climb down here in this weather? Who would choose to die under a bridge in the middle of nowhere for people they'd never see saved? The patrol moved on. Shepard breathed again. 2 more charges. The thing about courage is that it's not the absence of fear, it's action in spite of fear. And William Shepard was terrified. Not of dying. He'd made peace with that when he'd volunteered. But of failing. Of the charges not detonating. Of the bridge standing while tanks rolled across. Of 300 men dying because he wasn't good enough. The final charge went into place as the eastern sky began to lighten. Dawn was coming. With it would come the panzers. Intelligence said 600 hours. Maybe sooner. Time was running out for everyone. Shepard climbed back to bridge level, every movement agony. His body had passed through cold into something beyond temperature. His uniform was frozen rigid. Ice crystals had formed in his eyelashes, making every blink sound like breaking glass. But he moved. One hand over the other, one foot finding purchase. The human body's remarkable ability to continue when continuation seems impossible. At the bridge deck, he paused. This was the moment of choice. He could try to string detonation cord, give himself running distance, maybe survive the blast. But cord could fail in this cold, could be spotted by patrols, could give the Germans time to defuse his charges. No, this had to be certain. Direct detonation. Him and the bridge and the ending of both. He positioned himself at the center span. From here he could see the road stretching east. Empty now, but not for long. He pulled out the detonator, such a small thing to end so much. A metal box with a plunger. Press down and 8 charges fire simultaneously. Press down and the bridge falls. Press down and William Shepard ceases to exist. He thought he'd be alone at the end, but memories crowded in. His father teaching him to plow straight furrows. Keep your eye on where you're going, not where you've been. His mother's hands, always smelling of flour and vanilla, brushing hair from his forehead. Mary in her wedding dress, hand-sewn by her sister, beautiful in its simplicity. The memories felt warm, warmer than his frozen body, warmer than the December dawn. They wrapped around him like armor against the cold and the fear and the terrible certainty of what came next. Engine noise, distant but growing. The Panzers were early. Shepard gripped the detonator. Not yet. Had to wait. Had to be sure they were committed to the bridge. Too early and they'd just find another route. Too late and... The first tank appeared. Then another. Then another. A whole column of death rolling toward 300 helpless men. Tigers and panthers. 60 tons of steel and hate. Moving fast, confident. Why wouldn't they be? The Americans were in full retreat. What could stop them? One man could stop them. One man with 8 pounds of explosive and the will to use it. One man who decided that some things mattered more than living. The lead tank was a Tiger II. 70 tons of armor and firepower, the most feared weapon in the German arsenal. Its commander rode high in the turret, scanning for threats. Shepard could see his face, young, maybe younger than Shepard himself. Someone's son. Someone's brother. Someone who'd never make it home either. Strange how clear everything became in those final moments, the way snow crystals caught the dawn light. The sound of tank treads grinding against stone. The weight of the detonator in his hand. The absolute certainty that this was right. That this was necessary. That this was his moment. The column reached the bridge approach. Slowed. Tanks were vulnerable on bridges, confined, unable to maneuver. Their commanders knew this, but they also knew the Americans had nothing in the area that could threaten them. No anti-tank guns, no artillery, no air support, nothing. Nothing except one man they couldn't see. The lead Tiger began crossing. The bridge shook under its weight. Ancient stones that had carried Roman legions and medieval knights now bore the weight of modern war. Shepard felt the vibrations through his feet, through his hands, through the detonator. Not yet. The second tank followed, then the third. The bridge groaned but held. German engineering trusted Roman engineering, the past carrying the present toward a future that wouldn't happen. Not if Shepard had anything to say about it. He thought about the men in the hospital. Did they know someone was coming? Did they know someone cared enough to trade his life for theirs? Or were they lying there in pain and fear, convinced they'd been abandoned? They hadn't been abandoned. William Shepard remembered them. More tanks on the bridge now. The perfect moment approaching. Maximum destruction. Maximum delay. Maximum lives saved. His finger found the plunger. Such a simple motion. Press down. Spring compresses. Electrical circuit completes. Charges fire. Bridge falls. War changes. Lives saved. Life ended. He wondered if Mary would understand. If she'd forgive him for choosing duty over their future. If she'd remarry. Have children. Live the life they'd planned with someone else. He hoped she would. Hoped she'd be happy. Hoped she'd tell their children about the man who chose 300 strangers over his own tomorrow. The Tiger II reached the center span, directly over the main charges. Perfect position, perfect moment, perfect sacrifice. Shepard stood up. Let them see him. Let them know. Let there be a witness to what love of others could accomplish. The tank commander saw him, shouted, reached for his machine gun. William Shepard smiled, thought of bicycles and dancing and Ohio soil, and pressed down. The explosion shattered the morning. 8 charges firing in perfect synchronization. Ancient stone meeting modern explosive. 2,000 years of history ending in thunder and fire. The bridge didn't just fall, it disintegrated. The center span vanished as if it had never been. Tanks tumbled into the gorge, 60 tons of steel falling like toys thrown by an angry child. The lead Tiger II split in half. The second and third followed it down. Behind them, the column slammed to a halt. Tanks colliding. Commanders screaming. The perfect ordered advance turned to chaos in seconds. They found Shepard's body 50 yards from the bridge. The blast had thrown him clear, which shouldn't have been possible. Physics said he should have been vaporized. But sometimes physics yields to other forces. Sometimes the universe allows small mercies. He was still holding the detonator. The destruction of the bridge bought more than time. It bought salvation. With their route blocked, the Panzers had to find another way. By the time they did, American reinforcements had arrived. The hospital was evacuated. 300 wounded men loaded onto trucks and driven to safety. Men who would go home. Men who would live full lives. Men who would never know the name of the private who traded his future for theirs. But the soldiers knew. Word spread through the 101st Airborne like wildfire. A private had held the bridge. One man against a panzer division. The kind of story that sounds like propaganda until you see the destroyed bridge and the German tanks rusting in the gorge below. They put him in for the Medal of Honor. Posthumous. The citation spoke of extraordinary heroism and selfless service. Official language that couldn't capture the 22-year-old who liked to share his rations and kept his sister's picture in his helmet. Couldn't capture the quiet courage of a man who raised his hand when no one else would. The medal went to his mother. She kept it in a drawer, unable to look at it. What good was medal when her son was gone? What comfort was honor when Christmas would forever mean the day she learned her boy had chosen death? But Mary understood. She'd read his last letter so many times the words were carved into her heart. I found something worth more than my life. She didn't remarry, not because she couldn't love again, but because she'd been loved by someone who showed her what love really meant. Total, selfless, willing to pay any price for others. She became a teacher, spent 40 years in classrooms telling children about choices and consequences, about duty and sacrifice, about a quiet farm boy who became a hero not because he wanted glory, but because 300 men needed someone to remember them. The war ended 4 months later. The men Shepard saved came home to families who never knew how close they'd come to losing everything. They became fathers and teachers and doctors and mechanics. They built businesses and raised children and lived the lives Shepard had purchased with his own. One of them was Thomas Chen, a Chinese-American medic from San Francisco. He'd been in the hospital with shrapnel wounds, waiting for evacuation when the bridge blew. He spent the rest of his life wondering about the soldier who'd saved him, researching, investigating. Finally finding Shepard's family in 1962, he showed up at the farm unannounced. Stood on the porch where Shepard had said goodbye to his mother for the last time. Met the sister who'd never learned to ride the red bicycle. It still sat in the barn, untouched, a monument to interrupted promises. I wanted you to know, Chen said, that he mattered. That what he did mattered. I became a doctor because he gave me the chance. I've delivered over 3,000 babies, saved more lives than I can count. None of it happens without him. It wasn't just Chen. Robert Morrison survived the war and became an engineer, building bridges instead of destroying them. Each one a prayer for his friend who'd shown him what bridges were really for. Not just crossing divides, but protecting what mattered. James Harbour, barely 18 when shrapnel tore through his chest, lived to 91. Married his high school sweetheart, had 6 children, 18 grandchildren, 43 great-grandchildren. An entire family tree that existed because one man decided their future was worth more than his own. The stories multiplied. 300 men times decades of life times all the people they touched. Thousands, then tens of thousands, then numbers too large to calculate. The mathematics of sacrifice. One life becoming many. Death becoming life. Darkness becoming light. But it wasn't just about numbers. It was about the principle, the idea that in the worst of humanity's moments, someone could choose the best of humanity's impulses. That faced with impossible odds and certain death, someone could say yes, could volunteer, could stand up when standing up meant not sitting down again. The bridge was never rebuilt. The gorge stands empty now, a scar across the landscape. Trees have grown up around the remaining pillars. Birds nest in the crevices where Shepard placed his charges, nature reclaiming what war destroyed. On quiet mornings, locals say you can still hear the echo of the explosion. History refusing to fade, sacrifice demanding remembrance. Every December 28th, a wreath appears at the site. No one knows who places it. Maybe Chen's descendants, maybe one of the 300, maybe someone who simply believes that courage should be marked, that love should be remembered, that some deaths give life meaning. They said it was suicide. The official reports, written by men who hadn't been there, who hadn't seen the columns of German armor or felt the weight of 300 lives hanging in the balance. They called it a desperate gamble by a desperate army in desperate times. But William Shepard knew better. It wasn't suicide. Suicide is driven by despair, by the belief that nothing matters. What Shepard did was driven by hope, by the absolute certainty that everything mattered. Every life in that hospital, every future those men would have, every child they'd raise and every year they'd live. He didn't die because life had no value. He died because he understood life's true value, understood it so clearly that he could make the calculation without hesitation. His one life for their 300, his single future for all of theirs, not suicide, sacrifice. The distinction matters. In a world that often seems driven by selfishness, where people ask, "What's in it for me?" before, "How can I help?" Shepard's choice stands as a beacon. Proof that humans are capable of rising above their own interests, proof that love isn't just a word but an action, proof that duty isn't just following orders but following conscience. Every war produces heroes, men and women who charge machine gun nests or throw themselves on grenades. But Shepard's heroism was different, quieter, more deliberate. He had time to think, time to change his mind, 2 miles of frozen ground to reconsider. Every step a choice to continue. Every yard a renewal of his commitment. He could have turned back at any point, when the cold became unbearable, when the German patrols passed close, when he stood under that bridge in the darkness, holding death in his hands. No one would have blamed him. No one would have known. The 300 men in the hospital would have died never knowing someone had tried. But Shepard knew, and that was enough. We live in an age that celebrates survival above all else, that preaches self-care and self-protection as the highest goods, and those things matter. But Shepard reminds us that sometimes something matters more, that there are moments when the arithmetic of love demands everything, when the only way to truly live is to be willing to die. His story isn't comfortable. It asks uncomfortable questions. Would you raise your hand? Would you walk those 2 miles? Would you press that plunger? Most of us will never know. Most of us will live our whole lives without facing such stark choices. But we face smaller versions every day. The colleague who needs help when we're already overwhelmed. The stranger who needs kindness when we're running late. The cause that needs support when we'd rather stay comfortable. In these moments, we can ask ourselves, what would Shepard do? He'd remember that others matter, that duty isn't what we're ordered to do, but what we know is right. That love isn't sentiment but sacrifice. That sometimes the bridge we need to destroy is our own selfishness, our own comfort, our own excuses for why we can't help. 300 men lived because William Shepard died. Thousands more lived because those men lived. The ripples continue, spreading across decades, across generations, across the infinite possibilities that spring from one man's choice. They said it was suicide. He called it duty. He was right. Like this video and subscribe if you believe that history isn't just about dates and battles, but about individuals who chose others over themselves. Share your thoughts below. Do you have a family member who served? A story of sacrifice that shaped your family? We honor the past by remembering it, and we remember it by sharing these stories. This channel exists because these stories matter, because in a world that often feels dark, we need reminders of the light humans can create through their choices, because somewhere tonight, someone is facing their own bridge, their own moment of decision, and maybe Shepard's story will help them choose courage. History is made by ordinary people doing extraordinary things when extraordinary things are required. William Shepard was ordinary, a farm boy from Ohio who liked bicycles and dancing and writing letters home. But when history called, he answered. When duty knocked, he opened the door. When love demanded everything, he gave it. That's not suicide. That's the highest form of human existence. That's what we're capable of when we remember that we're more than just individuals struggling to survive. We're parts of something larger, links in a chain that stretches back to the beginning and forward to whatever end awaits. William Shepard is one of those links. Strong, unbreakable, forever connecting the past that was to the future that is. 300 men came home because he didn't. Remember his name. Remember his choice. Remember that in the darkest December, one man's light was enough to save multitudes. Remember that it still is.